Hello you beautiful misfits, my name is Matt and this is Pixel Burn, where I usually take a snarky look at some topics from the week's gaming news, but this week's episode is going to be a single topic affair instead, specifically a quick and flippant look at the recent Nintendo Direct. Ah, good old Nintendo. Nice of them to drop me some decent morsels of meaty gaming goodness to chew on here in the last days of this month of February. Wait, what? Fuck me, is it March already? Damn. Better get my arse in gear and get back to some sort of schedule. Anyway, as I was saying, here in this month of March, Nintendo did one of their regular Nintendo Directs, during which they dropped at least one hefty announcement of the kind that's usually hoarded for E3 like some precious jewel. But more on that later. The Direct itself was presented by Yoshiaki Koizumi, who had lots of information to share about upcoming games for Switch and 3DS. Yes, Nintendo put the 3DS right up front in this presentation, even though the 3DS seems kind of redundant, what with the Switch being able to do everything it does practically, and far more. Goodness, it just won't die, will it? Not that I want it to die, no. It's nice to see it still being supported. Somewhat perplexing, but nice. Although the vast majority of games being announced here were ports of older Nintendo titles. Not all of them, but still a decent amount, and even the new original titles had elements of previous ones. Like WarioWare Gold, for example, which launches July 27th. While it promises a stonking 300 microgames, as Ninty call them, a lot of them will be familiar to anyone who played WarioWare Inc., WarioWare Twisted, or WarioWare Touched. This particular title marks the series' debut on the 3DS, however, and the first WarioWare game since Game & Wario on the Wii U back in 2013. So if you're a fan of surrealness and all things Wario and have a 3DS, you're probably chuffed to bits by this news. It's just a shame he's mostly been relegated to supporting cast status and minigame collections, rather than more full-fledged platformers of his own like he had in the Game Boy days. The last such game he had all for himself was Wario Land Shake It on the Wii in 2008, although it has become available on the Nintendo eShop, so that's good I suppose. He had some great commercials for his games too, well, here in the UK anyway, at least. I'm pretty sure they were cool. Oh, why can't I remember them? Oh, I know, I'll look them up on YouTube.
Obey Wario! Destroy Mario!
All hail Wario! Wario's our Lord and Master. All hail Wario! Wario's our Lord and Master. Up next was something actually vaguely new. Dylan's Dead Heat Breakers. A sort of action RPG tower defense hybrid, originally planned only for an April 26th release in Japan, but now also confirmed for North America on May 24th and a day later for Europe, and apparently part of a series about an armadillo called Dylan who protects frontier villages from rock monsters. Also announced was Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, a port of the DS original, released in 2009, that's perhaps best described as Mario crossed with the movie Inner Space. You switch between a shrunken Mario and Luigi in exploring Bowser's manky innards, and Bowser himself doing stuff in the outside world like fighting bosses or other activities that have an effect on his internal geography, like drinking gallons of water to flood his inside so the brothers Mario can swim to another area. Rather than being a straight port, however, this version comes with an extra story chapter called Bowser Jr.'s Journey, in which Bowser Jr. goes on a journey? Moving on. One of the last of the 3DS announcements was a release date of March 23rd for Detective Pikachu, who has still not magically been revoiced at the last minute by Danny DeVito. He is getting an extra large amiibo though, so that's something at least. I mean, Detective Pikachu himself, the character, is getting an extra large amiibo. Not Danny DeVito. Which is another crime in and of itself. Maybe Detective Pikachu can investigate that. The other last 3DS announcement was a port of GameCube classic Luigi's Mansion with some added graphical polish, a new boss rush mode, and a map on the lower screen. It may not seem like much, but since the sequel, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, only came out on 3DS, it's only appropriate 3DS owners have the first one too. They can look forward to it sometime later this year, although Nintendo were being somewhat tight-lipped on an exact date. God, that was a slog. There's nothing wrong with the occasional port, but that segment felt like some frantic last-minute back catalogue pillaging. Still, at least the Switch segment would have a bevy of new titles, right? Well, not entirely. There were a decent wedge of ports in this segment too, although they were at least ones from other non-Nintendo systems and not just redone from Ninty's back catalogue. And the first game featured in this segment was definitely a new original title. Alright, so it was a new original Kirby title, but it's still a new game. Although, since it's a Kirby game, it's not exactly going to challenge you the way Celeste or The End Is Nigh does. But that's not what Kirby games are about anyway. Kirby games are for chilling out and doing Kirby things. With Kirby, and Kirby's friends in this case, since he now has the ability to instantly befriend enemies by lobbing a whopping great heart at them. If only it was so simple in the real world. Although calling it mere friendship is a bit of an understatement, any enemy hit by one of Kirby's friendship hearts immediately becomes an instant thrall to Kirby's will, demonstrating complete and utter obedient subservience with a fanatical loyalty unto death. If only it were so simple in the real world. Kirby can even convert his literal worst enemies into full-blown subservience as dream friends, whether it's Meta Knight, Waddle Dee, or even King Dedede. Yeah, him. Anyhow, for those of you hankering for some more chill Kirby fun and other assorted Kirbyage on your Switch, Kirby Star Allies launches on Kirby the 16th and will be Kirbying a free Kirby update about a Kirby and a half Kirby later, which is Kirby. Up next was Okami HD, an HD update to the classic PS2 Japanese mythology action adventure recently released on Steam, which I've been meaning to get myself at some point because it was originally made by Clover Studio. A chunk of Clover Studio went on to form Platinum Games after Clover shut down, and I bloody love Platinum Games' stuff. The Switch version will feature some Switch specific controls that make use of the touchscreen and will launch sometime in the summer as an eShop only purchase. Next on the list was Sushi Striker: The Way of Sushido, a port of a 3DS puzzle adventure game set in a world where sushi is forbidden. Oh, I just felt a great disturbance, as if millions of Californians suddenly cried out in terror. Followed by some news of the Square Enix RPG formerly known as Project Octopath Traveler, now called simply Octopath Traveler. You know, when Square Enix first announced this last year, I genuinely thought the Octopath Traveler part of Project Octopath Traveler was just a placeholder name, the way that Nier New Project was for Nier Automata. I mean, it certainly describes the game well enough, but it just feels a bit too functional, you know? Like Square Enix starting a studio in Tokyo that makes RPGs and calling it the Tokyo RPG Factory. You play as one of 8 characters on 8 separate adventures, and game producer Masashi Takahashi was here to tell us about 2 of them, namely Tressa, a merchant, and Alfin, an apothecary, whose job-specific skills give them unique ways to interact with NPCs. Takahashi also dropped a bit of info about the game's job system, how it related to combat, and a release date. July 13th to be specific, with a special edition available for people who like assorted trinkets with their retail releases. Not my sort of thing usually, but it's a map and a coin in this case, which, thanks to the Ultima series, are the only kind of collector's edition trinket I'm ever really tempted by. We then got our first look at the new No More Heroes title that Suda51 teased at the Switch's January 2017 reveal conference. Called Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes, it sees everyone's favourite otaku assassin Travis Touchdown, now approaching middle age, sucked into a prototype video game console called the Death Drive Mark II. Travis finds himself in a race against time through 6 different video game genres to defeat the boss of each genre and acquire the magical death balls they guard. Once all 6 death balls are gathered, they will then grant their bearer a wish. For fuck's sake, Sud, I just started recently watching Dragon Ball Z Kai. I was making this video to take a break from it. Hence why it's late. No concrete release date was provided for Travis Does Tron, only an assurance that it will be out sometime this year. After that came another port, but it was a port I actually give a toss about, namely Dark Souls. Although, can I really call it a port when it's actually a remaster with nicer HD textures, 1080p resolution as standard, and running at 60 frames per second? Oh wait, no. That last bit of info about the frame rate only applies to the Xbox One, PS4 and PC versions of the Dark Souls remaster, which are also coming. Here we go again. The Switch version of Dark Souls Remastered, however, will be capped at 30 frames per second like the original version was. That aside, it'll still come with all the DLC, run at 1080p on your big screen TV, and support 1 to 6 players in your game session at any one time, either helping you to kill bosses or conspiring to ruin your day. Still, that frame rate though, bit of a bugger, eh? Poor old Nintendo fans. If only there was something else they could get to help make up for that. Hello? Yes, I'd like to pre-order an Amiibo, please. Said Amiibo will, according to Nintendo, let you perform the praise the sun gesture with reckless abandon. Like that wasn't something players could and did do to their heart's content as soon as they got their mitts on it in game, any chance they could, any opportunity, praise the fucking sun. Of course, to do that you had to fulfill certain requirements, whereas one assumes this Amiibo will let you commence praising as soon as you wake up in your starting cell at the Undead Asylum. Finally, an Amiibo with real practical benefits. Speaking of practical benefits, there then came a brief break in the games to announce you can now use your My Nintendo Gold points earned by buying Nintendo games for something tangible-ish. You can now redeem them for digital games and DLC at the rate of 1 gold point to 1 British penny, or 1 euro cent, or presumably your regional equivalent, which as rates of exchange for Magic Electronic Space Money go is a pretty decent one. It was then back to the games with the reveal of Mario Tennis Aces for the Switch. Well, it's tennis, innit? With Mario, hence the name. Mario Tennis Aces. The presentation went into some length about there being 15 playable characters, up to 4-player multiplayer, a variety of shots you can use, and all new zone shots that let you actually aim your shot, and other details. But perhaps the most surprising thing about this announcement was the casual way Nintendo tried to induce PTSD flashbacks in any Zelda Breath of the Wild veterans who were watching. After that, it was time for a shed load of more ports, starting with Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, coming to both Switch and 3DS with some extra Super Mario Odyssey levels and multiplayer. After that came confirmation of Toby Fox's hit indie RPG Undertale, coming eventually to the Switch. I really should probably get around to playing the PC version at some point. I own it on Steam and have it installed, I just haven't touched it yet. I'm waiting for all the hype and fan madness around it to die down to a level I find somewhat tolerable. Which will probably be never, so... Another Switch port revealed was the complete edition of spooky puzzle platformer Little Nightmares, complete with all the DLC and, if you have the Pac-Man amiibo, the option for your character to wear a, quite frankly, fucking creepy Pac-Man mask. Honestly, does this look like a mask of Pac-Man to you? Or does it look like Pac-Man as a mask? I reckon it's the latter. Next up was South Park The Fractured But Whole, that the announcer, bless their little cotton socks, really tried their hardest to pronounce in a way that made it sound clean.
South Park The Fractured But Whole is coming to Nintendo Switch.
Meanwhile, Hyrule Warriors is also coming to the Switch, in a definitive edition due out on May the 18th that will also include all previous paid DLC and all 29 playable characters from both the Wii U and 3DS version. So you can now truly bin your Wii U and never look back. So yeah, solid stuff so far, but also rather predictable. Nothing really unexpected amongst all.
All 3 original Crash Bandicoot games are debuting on a Nintendo system for the very first time.
Okay, that was a tad unexpected. Although it probably shouldn't be, because it was Vicarious Visions who handled the remaster, and they're not bound to a single platform the way Naughty Dog are. Speaking of platforms, it's also coming out on Xbox One and PC. After that, and a brief bit about an event for ARMS called ARMS Global Test Punch, we then got some Splatoon 2 news, specifically the version 3.0 update coming in April, bringing with it 100 new pieces of gear for your kids. Squids. Kids. Squids. Kids. Squids. Kids. Squids. Kids. Squids. Kids. Squids. Squids. Inklings. Along with new maps and a new Rank X for hardcore Splatooners who've seen more ink spilled than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. The sort of people who might be interested in attending the Splatoon European Championships in Switzerland on March 31st, also announced here, where there's going to be a concert with, oh Christ, it's that fucking Vocaloid hologram witchcraft. All the kids go mad over these days. Expansions, now that's something my old man brain still comprehends. Splatoon 2's getting a single player one called the Octo expansion, with a story, lore, new characters and bosses for you to splat when it's released sometime this summer. And with that, this Nintendo Direct came to an end. Well no, there was one more Splatoon trailer. Or rather, it started out as a Splatoon trailer, then suddenly and ominously morphed into an apocalyptic trailer for dun 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 Super Smash Bros. For the Switch. Scant on details, but packed with enough fuel to keep the hype train chugging along at a fair old pace between now and E3, where more details will presumably be forthcoming. Yep, there it is. the big one. The announcement to really get Nintendo fans and Smash players all in a delighted, delirious dervish of discussion, dissection and other things beginning with D. Forensic analysis of the trailer has already begun in earnest, with tons of people poring over blurry stills like crime scene investigators, all eager to be the first with an answer to one of the community's most pressing questions. Questions like, is that Breath of the Wild Link? Is that actually Mario or just Diddy Kong wearing his hat? Will Bayonetta be in it? Is this a genuine new iteration of Smash or merely a port of an older one? Will L-cancelling return? Where's Mother 3? And so on and so forth. For the time being, I'm going to put my bet on it being an all-new Smash and that Bayonetta will return. If either of these two wild arsepull predictions turn out to be wrong, I'll pretend I never said them. If any of them are right, however, you'll never hear the end of it from me. And with that, the Nintendo Direct for March 2018 was over and out. It was alright, I suppose, with some surprising announcements of variable beefiness, in fact. Along with confirmations and announcements of a lot of ports, which is no bad thing in and of itself. There's nothing wrong with Nintendo and third parties bringing some old gems to the Switch, especially good Wii U titles. They just all felt a bit too expected, you know? There's nothing really surprising amongst them except maybe for the Crash Bandicoot remaster. In all fairness, however, my expectations for this presentation were set way too high by all the hype and squealing about it on social media beforehand. I tried to ignore it and judge the presentation's content on its own merits, but that pesky ambient glee seeps in through your pores and generally gets everywhere. Despite this vastly disproportionate amount of excitement and buzz for what's basically a monthly newsletter in video format, however, it still didn't set my little world alight the way it did some people. Nevertheless, the reveal of a new Smash installment, a brand new Mario game, even if it is just tennis, Splatoon 2 story DLC and a first glimpse of gameplay from the new No More Heroes were enough to convince me that I hadn't completely wasted my time watching it. Even though I still don't own a Switch. Why the hell did I watch this again? That's all for this episode of Pixel Burn. If you liked it, then please do let me know by clicking the requisite button down below. Perhaps even consider subscribing if you haven't already. And maybe even share it with your friends, your family, your dog, or Masahiro Sakurai. At the very least, I hope you found it tolerable. Meanwhile, till next time, as always, you can go now.